The massive alien ship appeared without warning, emerging from a swirling blue portal just beyond Mars' orbit. Earth's early warning systems lit up like Christmas trees, and within minutes, every military base on the planet was on high alert. Admiral James Walker stood in the United Earth Defense Force Command Center, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of dozens of screens. At 60 years old, he had spent 4 decades in military service, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Rogers, her fingers flying over the control panel. "The message is being automatically translated." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, gray-skinned being wearing an ornate uniform covered in strange symbols. Its large, dark eyes stared directly into the camera. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfectly translated English, "I am High Commander Gray of the Galactic Empire. Your world has been chosen for integration into our eternal empire. Resistance is unnecessary. Submit, and you will be granted the privileges of imperial citizenship." Walker exchanged glances with General Thompson, his second in command. They had practiced first contact scenarios, but this was far from the peaceful greeting they had hoped for. "Open a channel," Walker ordered. When the connection was established, he stepped forward. "High Commander Gray, I am Admiral James Walker of the United Earth Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact with other civilizations, but we cannot simply surrender our sovereignty." The alien's expression shifted to what might have been amusement. "Admiral, you misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. The Empire has integrated 10,000 worlds over 20,000 years. Your civilization is young, barely able to reach your own moon. We offer you the gift of advancement." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. The Empire's arrogance was clear, but what worried him more was their casual dismissal of humanity's capabilities. Earth had united not through peace, but through the shared understanding that they needed to be ready for this very moment. "High Commander," Walker spoke carefully, "I strongly suggest you review your historical records. Has the Empire ever encountered a species that spent most of its existence at war with itself?" Gray's expression didn't change. "Your primitive conflicts are of no concern. We have studied your weapons. Projectile-based weapons, crude nuclear devices, basic energy shields. Nothing that could challenge Imperial might." Walker nodded to Lieutenant Rogers, who began transmitting a carefully prepared package of information. "I'm sending you something to consider. This is a brief overview of human military history. We fought wars with sticks and stones, with swords and spears, with guns and bombs, with drones and lasers. We've never stopped improving our ways of fighting." The alien commander barely glanced at the incoming data. "Your species' violent nature only proves the need for Imperial guidance. You have 24 hours to submit your surrender. After that, we will begin the integration process, with or without your cooperation." As the transmission ended, Walker turned to his staff. "Send the coded signal. Operation Sleeping Giant is now active." Around the world, hidden military installations began powering up. Beneath the lunar surface, automated factories that had been mass-producing weapons for decades awakened. In underground bases, soldiers suited up in powered armor that the Empire knew nothing about. "Sir," General Thompson spoke softly, "should we show them everything?" Walker shook his head. "No. Let them come in thinking we're primitive. Let them think their energy shields and plasma weapons make them invincible. They'll learn what humanity has been preparing for." He walked to the window, looking up at the night sky, where he knew the Imperial ship waited. Humanity had dreamed of this moment, a first contact with an alien civilization, but they had never stopped preparing for war. Every science fiction story, every movie about alien invasions, had been taken as a warning by military planners. "Send one more message," Walker ordered. "Keep it simple." Lieutenant Rogers opened the channel, and Walker spoke his final warning to the Empire. "You've spent 20,000 years conquering willing or weak civilizations. We've spent 10,000 years learning to fight. This is your only warning. Run. The Empire's response came quickly. "You have 23 hours remaining to surrender." Walker smiled grimly. They would learn. They would all learn why humanity had never stopped preparing for war. The next morning, High Commander Gray agreed to a face-to-face meeting on neutral ground, the International Space Station. The Empire clearly expected this to be a surrender meeting. They were wrong. Walker sat at one end of the station's main conference room, watching as High Commander Gray ducked through the doorway. The alien was even taller in person, nearly 7 feet of gray-skinned authority. 2 Imperial guards flanked him, their sleek weapons held casually. "Your station is primitive," Gray said, looking around at the metal walls. "Though I suppose it's impressive for your level of development." Walker didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he pressed a button on the table in front of him. A holographic display sprang to life between them, making the Imperial guards twitch in surprise. "Oh, you have holographic technology." Gray seemed mildly impressed. "Perhaps you're not quite as primitive as we thought." "That's not what I wanted to show you," Walker said quietly. "Watch." The hologram showed Earth, peaceful and blue. Then it changed, showing World War I trenches filled with mud and blood. Soldiers charging through gunfire, tanks crushing barbed wire, chemical weapons drifting across battlefields. "This was just our beginning," Walker continued as the images shifted to World War I. Nuclear explosions bloomed over cities. Massive naval battles raged across oceans. Cities burned as bombs fell from endless waves of aircraft. Gray watched with growing unease as the images continued through history. Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East. Modern combat footage showed precision strikes, drone swarms, and orbital weapons tests. "Your point?" Gray asked, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "In the last 100 years alone, we've gone from basic flight to landing on the moon. From simple rifles to orbital kill satellites. From telegraphs to quantum communications. Do you know why?" The hologram changed again, showing military research labs, scientists working on new weapons, soldiers training in powered armor suits, spacecraft that didn't match any known Imperial designs. "Because we never stopped preparing," Walker explained. "Every alien movie, every science fiction story about invasion, we treated them all as warning signs. For the last 50 years, 30% of Earth's combined GDP has gone into hidden military research and development." Gray's large eyes narrowed. "You're trying to intimidate us with fictional stories and propaganda." Walker smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Lieutenant Rogers, show him the Mars base." The hologram shifted to show massive underground facilities beneath the Martian surface. Factories, hangars filled with ships, weapon platforms that had been hidden from Imperial scans. "We built this in secret over 30 years, Walker said. "Your scans didn't detect it because we developed our technology differently than yours. We didn't follow the normal path of technological advancement. We jumped straight to what we needed for war." "Impossible," Gray whispered. "Our scans showed only a small research outpost." "Because that's what we wanted you to see." Walker leaned forward. "You've spent 20,000 years fighting enemies who follow your rules of warfare. We don't follow rules. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome." The hologram showed one final image: Earth's combined military forces. Millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, weapons that the Empire had never seen before. "This is your final chance," Walker said. "Look at your history. Has the Empire ever fought an enemy that spent their entire existence preparing for war? An enemy that developed technology specifically to counter your advantages?" Gray stood up abruptly. "You're bluffing. No primitive species could have advanced so far in secret." "Then stay and find out." Walker's voice was cold. "But remember, we tried to warn you. Everything that happens next is your choice." The Imperial commander stared at Walker for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word, his guards hurrying to keep up. Back in the command center, General Thompson was waiting. Did they believe the warning? Walker shook his head. No. Their empire is too old, too set in its ways. They can't imagine a species developing differently than they did. So we fight. We fight. Walker looked at the countdown timer showing the hours until the Empire's deadline. And we show them why humanity's first response to discovering we weren't alone was to prepare for war. The Empire had 20 hours left to reconsider. After that, they would learn why humans had always been so good at fighting. As the deadline approached, Earth transformed. What looked like chaos to Imperial observers was actually a well-rehearsed dance, one that humanity had practiced for decades. In New York, entire skyscrapers sank into the ground, replaced by anti-aircraft platforms. Under London, massive bunker doors opened, welcoming millions into underground cities. Across Asia, rice fields split apart, revealing hidden hangars filled with fighter jets. Admiral Walker watched it all from the command center. "Status report," he ordered. "Civilian evacuation is at 85%. Lieutenant Rogers reported. All major cities will be clear within 3 hours. Underground shelters are fully stocked for a 6-month siege." General Thompson stepped forward with his own update. "Moon Base Alpha is online. Mars defense grid is powered up but still hidden. All orbital platforms are in position but running dark." The Empire's massive ships had been gathering for hours. Their fleet now numbered over 1,000 vessels, arranged in what they considered an unstoppable formation. High Commander Gray's voice boomed across all frequencies again. "Your time is nearly up. I see your people fleeing in fear. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." Walker ignored the transmission. Instead, he focused on the holographic display showing Earth's true military strength. Hidden weapons platforms orbited in the shadow of satellites. Stealth ships waited in the dark spots of radar coverage. Every piece was in place. "Sir," a young officer called out, "we're detecting energy buildups in the Imperial fleet. They're powering weapons." Walker nodded calmly. "Right on schedule. Begin Operation Dark Horse." Across Earth, military bases that had appeared abandoned suddenly hummed to life. In orbit, hundreds of small, automated drones detached from satellites and began moving into position. On Mars, massive hangar doors opened silently in the thin atmosphere. "All units report ready," General Thompson announced. "We're as prepared as we'll ever be." Walker looked at the countdown timer. 30 minutes remained until the Empire's deadline. But he knew they wouldn't wait that long. Their scans would be showing Earth's military bases emptying out, cities going dark. To them, it would look like surrender or evacuation. They were wrong. New energy spikes. Lieutenant Rogers called out. "They're launching fighters." "Let them come," Walker said quietly. "Remember the plan. Let them think they've caught us running." The first wave of Imperial fighters entered Earth's atmosphere. They flew in perfect formation, following tactical doctrines that had worked for 20,000 years. Behind them, larger ships moved forward to begin their standard subjugation pattern. Walker watched them approach, remembering all the simulations, all the planning. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, developing weapons and tactics specifically to counter the kind of technology they expected aliens to have. "Sir," General Thompson said, "Moonbase reports Imperial ships passing the outer defense line." "Good." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Send the signal. Let's show them what humanity has been hiding." Across Earth, in space, and on Mars, humans prepared for their first interstellar war. Not with fear, but with the confidence of a species that had never known lasting peace, a species that had turned warfare into an art form. In underground bunkers, soldiers pulled on powered armor suits designed to counter Imperial weapons. On hidden airfields, pilots climbed into fighters built with technology that broke the usual rules of development. In orbital stations, gunners waited at weapons that the Empire wouldn't believe possible. 5 minutes to deadline, Lieutenant Rogers announced. Walker looked at his command staff. Each of them had trained for years for this moment. They all knew the stakes. Humanity would not become just another conquered race in the Empire's long history. "Send one last message," Walker ordered. Lieutenant Rogers opened all channels, and Walker spoke to the Imperial fleet one final time. "You had your chance to leave. Remember that. What happens next is because you chose not to listen when we warned you to run." The Empire's response was predictable. More ships moved into attack position. They still didn't understand what they were facing. Walker looked at the countdown timer, then at his crew. "All units, prepare for combat. Operation Dark Horse begins in 3 minutes. Show them why humanity never stopped preparing for war." The final countdown began. Humanity's first interstellar war was about to start, and Earth was ready. The Empire struck first, just as planned. Their ships descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formations, energy weapons charging. To them, it looked like an easy victory approaching. They couldn't have been more wrong. "They've crossed the line," Lieutenant Rogers announced. "All ships are within the trap zone." Walker took a deep breath. "Activate quantum disruption shields." Across Earth, invisible energy fields sprang to life. The Empire's first volley of plasma weapons hit these shields and simply vanished. On the Imperial ship's sensors, it would look like their weapons had passed right through, hitting nothing. High Commander Gray's voice crackled over the communication system. "Your primitive defenses have failed. Surrender now. Launch all platforms," Walker commanded. Suddenly, thousands of hidden missile platforms revealed themselves. They had been there all along, disguised as satellites, space debris, and common structures. Each platform carried dozens of missiles designed specifically to counter Imperial shield technology. The Empire's perfect formation became their perfect trap. Multiple direct hits. Lieutenant Rogers called out, excitement in her voice. "Imperial shields are failing." They didn't expect kinetic weapons. Walker watched as the first wave of Imperial ships broke apart under the assault. The Empire had spent so long relying on energy shields, they'd forgotten about simple physical impacts. Their ships had no defense against good old-fashioned missiles. "Sir, the enemy is trying to regroup," General Thompson reported. "They're falling back to their secondary formation." "Time to show them our ships," Walker ordered. "Launch the Ghost Fleet." From hidden bases on the moon, hundreds of human spacecraft emerged. They looked nothing like Imperial ships. Where the Empire built large, imposing vessels, humans had created smaller, faster craft. Each one carried weapons that ignored Imperial shields completely. "Ghost Fleet engaging," Lieutenant Rogers reported. "Imperial forces are in chaos. Their targeting systems can't lock onto our stealth technology." The battle in space looked like a dance. Imperial ships fired blindly at human vessels they couldn't properly track. Human ships darted between their massive opponents, firing weapons that bypassed shields and struck directly at vital systems. 30% of the Imperial fleet is disabled, General Thompson announced. They're starting to retreat from Earth orbit. But High Commander Gray wasn't done yet. His massive command ship moved forward, launching a new wave of fighters. "Predictable," Walker muttered. "Launch the drone swarms." From every major city, swarms of small combat drones took to the sky. Each drone was barely larger than a bird, but carried weapons specifically designed to target Imperial fighter craft. The Empire's fighters, built for grand space battles, had no defense against thousands of tiny, agile attackers. "Imperial fighters are dropping like flies," Rogers reported. 80% casualties in their fighter squadrons. On the main screen, Walker watched High Commander Gray's face appear again. The alien's confidence was gone, replaced by confusion and fear. "This is impossible," Gray shouted. "Your technology. You can't have developed these weapons. You're supposed to be primitive." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "We tried to warn you. Humanity hasn't had a single decade of true peace in our entire history. We've spent thousands of years learning how to fight. Did you really think we'd stop just because we reached space?" The battle continued for another hour, But the outcome was already decided. Imperial ships retreated in disorder, their perfect formations shattered. Their advanced shields proved useless against human weapons designed to ignore them. Their targeting systems couldn't track ships built to be invisible to their technology. Enemy fleet is retreating past Mars orbit, Lieutenant Rogers announced. We've lost contact with their remaining ships. Walker nodded. Casualties? Minimal, sir. Our preparation paid off. We lost 12 ships and 8 orbital platforms. Enemy losses are estimated at 300 capital ships disabled or destroyed. It was a stunning victory, but Walker knew better than to celebrate too early. Maintain battle stations. They'll be back, and next time they'll be ready for our current weapons. You think they'll try again? General Thompson asked. Of course, Walker replied. But that's why we only showed them half of what we can do. Humanity has a lot more surprises waiting if they want to continue this fight. The first battle was over. Humanity had won. But everyone in the command center knew this was just the beginning. 3 days after their first defeat, the Empire returned with an even larger fleet. But this time, humans didn't wait for them to attack. As Imperial ships approached Mars, they encountered something unprecedented. Humanity launching its own offensive. Launch Operation Lightning Strike, Walker commanded from his new position on the flagship Freedom. Show them what a real human offensive looks like. From behind Mars' moons, hundreds of ships appeared. But these weren't the same vessels from the first battle. These were Earth's true warships, kept hidden until now. Sleek black vessels that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Ships built for one purpose: aggressive warfare. Imperial fleet is attempting to enter their combat formation, Lieutenant Rogers reported from her station on the bridge. Their shields are modified. Our previous weapons may not work. Walker smiled. Good thing we planned for that. Launch the new drones. Across the human fleet, launch bays opened. Instead of traditional weapons, they released clouds of what looked like metallic dust. The Empire ignored these clouds, focusing on defending against the weapons they'd seen in the first battle. Nanite swarms active, General Thompson announced. Beginning Phase 2. The metallic clouds suddenly came alive, forming into millions of tiny robots. As they reached the Imperial ships, they began eating through hull plating and shields alike. No defense could stop them. They were too small, too numerous, and too aggressive. High Commander Gray's panicked voice filled the command channel. What is this madness? This isn't how war is fought. This is exactly how humans fight war, Walker responded calmly. We adapt. We evolve. We overcome. The Imperial fleet's formation broke as ships tried to escape the nanite swarms. But that's when the human fleet struck. Their ships moved in patterns that made no sense to Imperial tacticians, seemingly random, chaotic movements that somehow worked perfectly together. Enemy fleet is in disarray, Rogers reported. Their command and control structure is breaking down. They relied too much on central command, Walker observed. Each ship waiting for orders instead of acting independently. Another weakness we can exploit. Launch the AI combat systems. Suddenly, the human ship's movements became even more unpredictable. Each vessel was now partially controlled by advanced AI systems that could make combat decisions in microseconds. The Empire's rigid tactical doctrine couldn't handle such rapid, unpredictable changes. Sir, Thompson called out, we've located High Commander Gray's flagship. It's trying to retreat behind their support fleet. Walker nodded. Perfect. Time for the killing stroke. All ships, execute Protocol 7. The human fleet suddenly split into 3 groups. One continued the frontal assault, while another harassed the Imperial fleet's flanks. But the third group, led by Walker's flagship, did something the Empire considered impossible. They opened short-range wormholes in the middle of combat. Wormhole drive stable, Rogers announced. Ready to jump on your command. Take us in, Walker ordered. The Freedom and its escort ships vanished, reappearing directly behind the Imperial command ship. Before Gray could react, Human vessels were firing from point-blank range, their weapons carefully targeted to disable rather than destroy. Imperial flagship's engines are disabled, Thompson reported. They're dead in space. Walker opened a channel to Gray's ship. Still think we're primitive, Commander. Your empire has forgotten what real warfare looks like. You've grown soft, predictable. Humanity never had that luxury. The battle ended quickly after that. With their command ship disabled and their formations in chaos, the Imperial fleet retreated in disorder. They left behind dozens of disabled ships, their crews evacuated by human vessels. Enemy fleet is jumping out of the system, Rogers confirmed. Long-range sensors show them regrouping near Jupiter. Walker looked at the tactical display, showing the battle's aftermath. They'll be back. But next time, they'll be even more cautious, more afraid. Fear makes enemies predictable. Sir, Thompson asked, should we press our advantage? We could strike while they're disorganized. No, Walker replied. Let them run. Let them tell others what happened here. The Empire needs to learn that humanity isn't just another species to conquer. We're something they've never faced before. A species that turned war into an art form. The human fleet regrouped, recovering their nanite swarms and preparing for the next battle. They had won again, but everyone knew the war was far from over. The Empire would return, and humanity would be ready with even more surprises. A week after their second defeat, the Empire did something unexpected. They requested a meeting, not for surrender, but for understanding. Admiral Walker agreed, but this time he chose the location. The surface of Mars. High Commander Gray stood in Earth's Mars base, his tall frame less imposing than before. His eyes moved from one display to another, watching humans train in various combat scenarios. Each simulation showed warfare unlike anything the Empire had seen in 20,000 years. Your soldiers, Gray said quietly. They all train differently. Walker nodded, leading the alien commander through the facility. Every unit develops its own tactics. We don't believe in one standard way of fighting. It makes us unpredictable. They stopped at a large window overlooking an underground city. Not a military base, but a complete civilian settlement. Thousands of humans lived and worked beneath the Martian surface, hidden from Imperial scans. How long has this been here? Gray asked. 15 years, Walker replied. While your empire watched our surface activities, we built entire cities underground. Not just on Mars, but on several moons in our system. They continued their tour, reaching a massive chamber filled with different types of weapons and vehicles. Each looked strange to Imperial eyes, designs that broke conventional rules of warfare. Your technology, Gray observed, it developed wrong, not following the normal pattern of advancement. Walker smiled. Not wrong. Different. We didn't develop technology for peace and then adapt it for war. We developed it for war from the start. Everything humans build has a potential military use. They watched as soldiers demonstrated urban combat techniques. Teams moved through mock-ups of city streets, using tactics that seemed chaotic, but worked with deadly efficiency. In 20,000 years, Gray said, we've never seen warfare like this. Your species fights like we enjoy it. Walker finished. We don't. But we're very, very good at it. Humanity spent its entire history fighting itself. When we looked to the stars, we didn't see peace. We saw new battlefields. They reached the final stop on their tour, a holographic display of Earth's full military capability. Not just what they'd shown in battle, but everything. Weapons that could tear apart planets, ships that could outmaneuver light itself, defenses that made Earth almost impossible to conquer. This is just one system, Walker explained. Just Earth and its colonies in Sol. Imagine what humanity could do with access to multiple star systems. Gray's large eyes showed something new. Respect, tinged with fear. The Empire. We've grown complacent. Our weapons are ancient designs, barely improved over millennia. Our tactics haven't changed in 10,000 years. Because they worked, Walker nodded. Until you met someone who thought differently about war. Someone who never stopped preparing for the worst. Your warning, Gray said quietly. When you told us to run, you weren't trying to scare us away. You were trying to save us from this. Yes, humanity doesn't want to fight your empire. We don't want to show the galaxy why we're so good at warfare. But we will if we have to. Gray turned to face Walker fully. The Empire has never retreated from a system, never admitted defeat, but we've also never faced a species like humanity. Then let this be a first, Walker suggested. Return to your empire. Tell them what you've seen. Warn them that some species are better left alone. And if they don't listen, Walker's expression hardened. Then we'll keep showing you new ways to fight until they do. Everything you've seen so far, it's not even half of what humanity can do when we're truly threatened. High Commander Gray looked one last time at the military displays, at the weapons his empire had never imagined, at the soldiers trained in warfare beyond his understanding. Then he nodded slowly. I will tell them, he said, and I will pray to my gods that they listen. Because if they don't, Walker finished, they'll learn why humanity warned them to run. The Empire was beginning to understand. Humanity wasn't just another species to conquer. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, a civilization that had turned warfare into a science, combat into an art form, and victory into a certainty. 1 month after High Commander Gray's visit to Mars, the Empire's main fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. 5,000 ships, the largest fleet they had gathered in 5,000 years. Earth prepared for the biggest battle in human history. But the battle never came. Instead, a single ship approached Earth, carrying Gray and the Imperial High Council themselves. Admiral Walker met them in the same space station where he had first tried to warn them. The High Council has reviewed all evidence, Gray announced to the assembled human leaders. We have spent 20,000 years believing we were the greatest power in the galaxy. We were wrong. Walker sat quietly, watching as the Imperial leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. These beings had never admitted defeat before. Their pride was suffering, but their wisdom was finally showing. In 1 month, Gray continued, humanity showed us more military innovation than our empire has seen in 1,000 years. You achieved in decades what took us millennia. And you did it all in secret, hidden beneath the surface of your worlds. The head of the High Council, an ancient being called the First Speaker, raised his hand. We came to offer peace, not from fear, though we do fear what humanity might do. We offer peace because we finally understand what you tried to tell us. Walker leaned forward. And what is that? That some species are born for war, the First Speaker said. Not because they love it, but because they never had a choice. Humanity fought itself for thousands of years. You never had the luxury of peace that our empire enjoyed. Gray activated a holographic display showing a new map of the galaxy. We propose these terms. Earth and the Sol system will be recognized as sovereign territory. A buffer zone of 50 light-years will be established around your space. No Imperial ships will enter without permission. And in return, Walker asked, though he already knew the answer. In return, you teach us, Gray said simply, not just about warfare, but about adaptation, about innovation. The Empire has grown stagnant. We need to learn how to change, how to improve. The human leaders discussed the offer among themselves, but Walker already knew what they would decide. This was the best possible outcome, peace through strength, respect through capability. We accept, Walker announced. With one addition, Earth will send observers to your empire. Not to interfere, but to watch, to make sure both sides keep their promises. The First Speaker nodded. Agreed. And we will spread the word to all corners of the empire. The humans of Sol are not to be threatened. They are to be respected, and perhaps feared a little. As the treaty was signed, Walker remembered his first warning to the Empire. He had told them to run, trying to prevent bloodshed. They hadn't listened then, but they were listening now. Later, back in his office on Earth, Walker looked at the latest reports. Already, news of humanity's victory was spreading through the galaxy. Other alien races were sending messages, seeking alliance or merely trying to understand how a primitive species had defeated the mighty empire. "Sir," Lieutenant Rogers entered with a new report. "The Empire is already implementing changes based on our advisory team's suggestions. They're completely reorganizing their military." Walker nodded. "They're learning. That's good. A stagnant empire would eventually try to fight us again. The learning empire might become a true ally." "Do you think they'll ever try to conquer Earth again?" Rogers asked. Walker looked out his window at the city below, where life was returning to normal. Children played in parks while defense satellites orbited silently overhead. Humanity had achieved what it always wanted: peace through strength. "No," he said finally. "They understand now. The Empire spent 20,000 years conquering species that followed their rules of warfare. Then they met humanity, a species that never played by anyone's rules but our own. The war was over before it truly began. Humanity had proven itself not just a match for the Empire, but something entirely new in the galaxy, a species that had turned their long history of warfare into their greatest strength." And across the Empire, a new saying began to spread among their worlds: "If you value your empire, never threaten the humans. They tried to warn us to run, and we should have listened."